Hey, welcome to David's Life and Observation with your host, David Welch. And today's episode is about traitors to the United States of America. Now, uh, the government of the United States of America calls Snowden a traitor, Assange a traitor, all these people that actually exposed their corruption, they have deemed traitors or treasonous. Chelsea Manning, bunch of people who blew the whistle. Whistleblowers are not traitors. They're not. They are citizens who witness corruption, witness the government violating people's rights and breaking the law, and expose them. That's what they are. They actually have some that's like gone in this generation. Integrity, honesty, and they uphold the Constitution because they're defending it against enemies, foreign and domestic. Part of the Constitution mentions domestic because there are domestic terrorists. They are in all levels of government. They are in all capacities of government jobs. And right now, a lot of them sit in the Senate and the House. A lot of traitors, a lot of treasonous motherfuckers that allow shit to happen in this country. And there's a traitor and a treasonous son of a bitch sitting in the White House. It's, not so much for the Russian collusion thing, but, when you are a bystander in your own government, in your own office, and here's what I mean. Trump is allowing those beneath him and allowing those in his name, essentially, as the president of the United States, do corrupt shit. He allows them to paint the bad brand of his administration. Now, he only has so much power. I get that. He only has so much influence. I also get that. But he also needs to be on a rampage. And there's no reason why we can't have a president who does a daily video, or not even a weekly podcast, so to speak, and does kind of like a fireside chat. In fact, that's what I would call it, is the new fireside chat, where the president, talks about his campaign, talks about his administration, gives information to the press, and, even if he has a team of writers writing it all down for him, he's at least providing the public more than he is already. And the reason I would advocate for something like that is because people are left out of the loop so often, and they don't get a chance to challenge what the president does, because they place him on royalty status. They place him like this aloof king, this aloof governance. That's not the way the president was supposed to be. The president is supposed to be a man of the people, elected by the people to support the people, not just his particular brand of constituents. No, the president represents the entirety of the United States of America, and who we place above all to lead the country in the direction that we, the people, want to go. It just simply isn't the case. It just simply hasn't been the case for probably 100 years. The presidents have all been corrupt in one way or another throughout their administration. They've broken laws, violated treaties, all sorts of things. So for me to call him a treasonous son of a bitch, he really is. Now, like I said, Trump has a lot of good things in his administration, and the Dems are doing the same thing the Republicans did to Obama, and they demonize and berate and go after him every step of the way. The guy can't wake up in the morning without having 5 or 6 Democrats fucking yelling from the walls, saying he did something that he had no fucking control over, and he probably had no idea he was doing it. People are fallible, and we have to understand that. We also have to understand that those who are screaming the loudest are the most fucking corrupt, and their districts and their constituency is fucking crazy. They gerrymander the shit out of everything, and it's just nuts that people allow these talking heads that get into government positions and fucking make a farce of the office that they hold. Happens all the time. But yeah, so we're getting to the point where in our society, and we see this all over the world. We see this in Venezuela. We see this in Hong Kong. We see this in other countries, that there are protests and uprisings that happen. And they get to the point, at least in other countries, not yet here, where government officials have been either murdered or bodily removed from office and thrown in a cage. Because their people are doing what people do and what people should do as citizens, and removing those officials who believe they have too much power or so much power that they don't have to answer to the people. And they do. And that's any public official. Like, if people really made a go at law enforcement officers, or really made a go at public officials, and bodily remove their ass from their public seats, or judges, or anything like that, we would see a wholly breakdown in our societal structure as we know it. It would be chaos for at least a year and a half of literally just pretty much a little civil war would probably ensue, because it would literally be the elites, the rich, and the well-to-do versus the throngs, the mass of the poor, who have, by and large, less armament and less, but they have the higher body count. We're going to see a faction war, and we already see a faction war between the Republicans and the Democrats, and we even see the Libertarians getting into it every once in a while. But Libertarians really do want small government. They want both parties to really go mind their own fucking business and stop meddling in people's personal lives. And both parties are, they want to say they're for liberty. They want to say they're there for free, free rights, things like that. But everything they do, every law they pass, chinks away little chunks of our civil liberties. Not just that, we are being taxed to the point of lunacy. We actually need to have riots on the account of taxes. We are being, as a society, by and large, taxed everywhere we go. Everywhere, every little thing. There's so much being taken from everybody. And it's at all levels. It's not just the rich that are getting taxed the fuck, because they are, let's be honest. They're getting taxed. They're not, they probably should get taxed actually a little bit more if we're doing the whole tax thing. But people should definitely keep what they earn, right? If you give that power back to the people where they actually keep what they earn, the economy, at least for a period of time, will fucking boom. And the quality of life is going to get a lot better for a lot of people. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, that'll just, cause inflation. That, we are already facing inflation. We are already facing a situation all across the country where people are not living or not receiving a livable wage, where you have to have 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 sources of income to come into a single household to afford that household, to afford food. And a lot of people are saying, well, there's a lot of extras that people want and have. Extras being cable TV. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of millennials don't have cable. We don't. I'm on that upper echelon of millennials. I'm like a zennial. Like, I'm between Xers and millennials. And I'm still classified as a millennial, I suppose. But I'm a part of the generation that literally all I have is Hulu and Netflix. That's it. That's all I have. And it's a lot of content. Believe me, it's plenty of content for me and my kids. And we have access to video games and stuff like that. But we haven't bought in video games in probably 2 or 3 years, right? People always say, hey, live within your means. But if people actually lived within their means, they wouldn't be able to afford, and they often can't still, afford to live where they're at. Simple as that. If we all lived according to how much we make, a lot of people would be sleeping in cardboard boxes right now. A lot of people do sleep in cardboard boxes. A lot of people do sleep in a 3-bedroom household with 15, 20 people in it, because all of those incomes it takes to afford the rent where they're at. And you can tell people to move, But often moving doesn't help their situation. You can say, oh, well, go get educated. There's a lot of educated motherfuckers sleeping on floors right now. People with master's degrees, doctorates. And it's not just degrees that of, people who are laying on the ground asleep. There are people that are masters in the trades. I'm talking people who are electricians, people who are plumbers, people who are auto mechanics, and those trades are needed. They are super valuable, and a lot of the times they are not being paid their worth, and that's saying a lot. Like electricians, most electricians, I'm gonna say, do make quite a bit of money, especially if you're a journeyman. You're making 35, $40 an hour in some cases, not every case, but you're doing all right. Now, if you're working out in the oil fields, damaging our country and sucking the blood out of our country, then yeah, you can make quite a bit of money doing dumb shit like fracking, stuff like that. Now, I understand people need jobs and people probably enjoy their work and what they do, but they also are not taking into account the ramifications of what they do. And even if they are okay with it. They sleep well at night because they're making money. We shouldn't be a society where just because we make money doing something dirty doesn't, it shouldn't say, hey, we can still sleep at night. And there's a lot of people who quit the oil fields because they realize what is going on. They realize they're hurting Mother Earth. Now, don't get me wrong, the Earth is going to be here long after people. The physical Earth is going to be here. It's just, if we want to live on it longer and we want to sustain our lives as human beings on this planet, we have to give her a break. We have to stop just sucking the resources out of her, and we have to do something like recycle. We have to get to the point where everybody in our society deems it super important to recycle, plant trees. And we do have Arbor Day, but we need Arbor years. We need years where we just do nothing but plant and grow. That way we as a society have a society to hand over to our kids. Otherwise, we're going to get to a post-apocalyptic shit that we keep reading and writing about that we don't actually want to happen, but may happen because subconsciously we just keep doing the shit that leads to that. Now let's go back to the treasonous motherfuckers. Let's go back to the people who are the domestic enemies. Now, a lot of people will put a label on domestic enemies who are people who actually don't do a whole bunch. Now, people will say, okay, well, neo-Nazis are domestic terrorists. Okay, fair. A lot of people will say the Black Panthers are domestic terrorists. Okay, I can see where you would say that, but what have all their actions dictated? What about their actions now? Now, are there a few attacks a year on people of different colors and races? Yeah, that happens. Are there people who use religion as their vehicle to say, I'm going to go kill a whole bunch of people in a nightclub or things like that? Yeah, that fucking happens. But it's not always tied to, hey, that guy was a neo-Nazi, or hey, that guy was a Black Panther. It could be more than that. It could be, yeah, that guy was a Muslim Black Panther, or that guy was a Christian Black Panther, or that guy was a Christian neo-Nazi. And they're pretty much all Christian in name, not actual practice. But, they advocate for an ideology, and that's not always the case. Now, we do have other domestic terrorists, and here's why they're domestic terrorists. Politicians can be enemies that are domestic because they will actively pass laws. They will listen to lobbyists. They will take on money from lobbyists to pass laws or to regulate things, not even regulate or deregulate things that should be regulated, or regulate things that should be okay in a free market as a deregulated thing, because they're playing the monopoly game and they're playing it at a higher level than everybody else, and they're using our money to do it. I believe the IRS is a domestic terrorist unit hell-bent on seizing as much money as they can from the American people at all costs. They will send men with guns. They will send men with badges. And they will get as many agencies as they can to come take your things, to come take your money, to come take your property. And they have, and they will continue to do so until they are stopped. the state imposing random fees and fines for every little thing. Yeah, I understand you need to be able to pay your employees. Yes, there is an influx of documents and things like that that need to be processed and gone through. But there's also a need for people to be able to get by and live, not just the government. The government, does pretty fucking well, and they take a hell of a lot of money from the American taxpayer all the time. They spend a lot of time and energy taking money. And here's another way they take money. They hire goons, and they give them a badge and a gun, and they have them patrol the highways, not for public safety, because that is the lie they want you to believe. They want you to believe it's for public safety. They want you to believe that it's for the greater good, and it's not. It's for revenue generation. If someone has a taillight out, and it's during the day, and there's, a guy's like, cop pulls it behind him. Oh, well, I saw you using your brakes and you have your left taillight out. Now, most of the time, Fixit tickets, are not so damaging, but on the surface, it's just a Fixit ticket. And then what they do is they will try and find other things to fuck with you. Oh, well, this isn't the exact address that you live at. We're going to give you a ticket now for not having proper license. You need to update your license. Oh, and by the way, your registration is due this month, but we're going to go ahead and cite you anyway. Or your registration it was just overdue a month, but we're going to go ahead and cite you anyway for no registration. Oh, and by the way, your insurance card says, or you don't have your insurance card available immediately when I ask, so therefore you're going to get an insurance ticket too. So therefore, your one Fixit ticket turned into 17 other tickets. And once people get into a situation where they get violation after violation after violation, their ability to drive on public roads is taken away from them. Their vehicles, especially if they're have a lot of violations, or let's say, hey, you're caught driving without the king's permission and have a license, then your car gets taken away from you, and then you got to go to the impound lot and pay those motherfuckers, and that ends up becoming this vicious cycle of money that people don't readily have available. So what happens is a car that they're making payments on ends up getting towed, and they can't get it out, and then the fees become so astronomical. It's like, they might as well give up the car, yet they're still going to pay for their car. Now, if you're driving without a license and you got all these other things, and they find, heaven forbid, they find a little bit of cannabis or a little bit of a substance that the king doesn't give you permission to have, then you're digging yourself even fucking deeper. You can end up going to jail, being incarcerated. You can lose your job. So in one simple, routine traffic stop, you can end up being, incarcerated. You can end up going to jail, even prison, if it's a quantity that the king deems that, is too much for society to hold illegally still, then they could end up in federal prison over a traffic stop. And then they have no ability or recourse to fix anything or do anything because they're already poor and destitute. They're just trying to get from A to B. They're just trying to get to a job, or they're just trying to work. And people don't have. And then once they get put in jail, then they have bond, and then they can't afford the bond to get out of jail to go to work. I mean, it's a trickle-down effect. One interaction with law enforcement can literally set you back 20 years or more. Just one interaction with one law enforcement officer over a fucking Fixit ticket could ruin your entire life. Now, that's a kind of a worst case scenario for the most part. Most officers are just going to cite you for the one thing. But if you're riding dirty, so to speak, where you don't have the king's for insurance, you don't have the king's permission slip, and you don't have the king's vehicle tax extortion ticket, then you can end up going for a ride in shiny bracelets in the paddy wagon, and it's all over. And mind you, in that situation, nobody's a victim. the state's not a victim of you doing what you're trying to do and make a living. Nobody's a victim in that situation. And it happens all the time. There are people who are incarcerated for crimes that they did not commit. There are people incarcerated for vehicle infractions. And if you think that doesn't happen a lot, it happens a grip. In fact, we have a debtors prison based on that whole premise where you rack up a lot of tickets, you can't pay your fines and fees, and then they offer you jail time. Instead of the obligation to pay those fees, essentially a debtor's prison. So you have this debt that you owe the state. We're going to put you in a cage and make you do our bidding for however many days the black-robed little sultan wants to give you, according to a vague understanding of his own rules and his jurisdiction. And so every officer that's on the road, that's out there terrorizing people who haven't committed an actual crime, they violated vehicle code, or they don't have the king's permission to do something. And a lot of times the interactions with society and law enforcement are people who are not in fact criminals, but people who don't have the king's permission to do something or have something, like convening at a park. Somebody will come by. It'll be either park ranger or a law enforcement officer, and say, well, you don't have the king's permission because you have 76 people gathered for this barbecue. So in order to have this barbecue, you need to get the king's permission, which can cost you a fee. Oh. So, or, hey, you're fishing, you don't have the king's permission to fish, or you don't have the king's permission to hunt, and get food, then yeah, we're going to go ahead and throw you in a cage for that. And they do. Or they hand you a ticket that you often can't pay that will put you into collections, or that'll, do a whole bunch of damage. And if they serve you, they're going to find, if they do find you, they will send men with guns and put a warrant out for your arrest if you do not show up to their court appearance. All of this over fishing, all of this over a traffic violation, all of this over basic things that people don't always have the means to be on top of, because they work at McDonald's, they work at a grocery chain, they work somewhere, and that happens to be the first job, and the second job, even combined, doesn't necessarily make all a bunch of money. And then to sneer at those people and say, oh, well, you just need to get a better job. It's not always they don't always have the qualifications to get that better job. And they often have to go further into debt to get the qualifications to get the better job. And there's not a group of people out there unwilling to do the hard work, because there are a bunch of people out there doing hard work every day, and they don't necessarily have the credentials. A lot of times too, where you'll have superheroes in business, and then the one person gets credit for all the work that their underlings do, and then they're getting the raises, they're getting higher up in the food chain, whereas the people who are kicking ass and taking names are often shit upon and given the lowest dollar amount that they could pay you legally, and want you to work 50, 70 hours a week. And then how dare you have a sick day? How dare you have a moment where you need a mental health day? How dare you have a family member that dies? How dare you get pregnant without the king's permission? I mean, essentially, that's how businesses operate. And corporations that are mega corporations, and they shit on people daily, and people go to them because, hey, they often have the cheapest prices, or hey, that's the closest store in 100 miles that has a certain product that I need for my job, or I need for my kids, or or hey, that's the closest pharmacy, and I need to be able to stop at the pharmacy because that's a place that can have drugs, legal drugs that the pharmaceutical companies never get in trouble for shoving down your throat, but they have lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, even though it's FDA approved. And they are literally the reason we have an opioid epidemic in this country. Yet none of those pharmaceutical company CEOs or anybody at any level is incarcerated or in prison for paying doctors incentives to shove pills down your throat and diagnose you with shit that you don't even have, to shove more pills down your throat because they can bill that. And the reason I understand the medical industry being so high pay isn't for the doctor's sake, even though they get compensated well. It's really for the pharmaceutical industries and the medical companies that provide the supplies to doctors to do their shit. That's why the extortion rates are so high at a medical facility. That's why you walk into any surgery in the United States, they're gonna hit you for $500,000. They're gonna bill your insurance, and ultimately you're still gonna have a $20,000, $15,000 to $20,000 obligation for any repair of your body that needs to happen. Or heaven forbid you have cancer, or heaven forbid you have anything else, and they fucking put you in a facility and then they poison the shit out of you to try and get something that's killing you out of you. Doesn't make sense. They don't want a cure. They don't give a shit about curing cancer. They really don't, because they make money with the sick. They don't make money from healthy people. So if they can keep you sick longer, they're gonna do it. And that's how they make their money. They bill insurances for the ungodly. There are bitches out there. There are motherfuckers that bill insurances for teaching a new mom how to hold a baby. Yo, if a mom already has 3 kids, she knows how to hold a baby. Why the fuck are you going to charge her for holding a baby? Hospitals charge for everything. They charge for going in there for a visit. They charge you anything. Just to get a consultation, that's $100. Just to get a consultation, just to let someone else inform you and agree that you are sick. Well, I'm sick. No shit, Sherlock. Exactly what is it and how do I beat it? That's what people want to go in there and know. They want to go in there, hey, I'm sick. I have something. I'm not feeling well. It's not normal. What is it and how do I beat it? That's all motherfuckers want to know. And doctors are the gatekeeper of that knowledge. Well, you have this particular thing wrong with you, and this is what it's going to take to. That'll be $1,000. Fuck. In Christ Almighty, if I had the ability to do that, which I'm going to start invoicing motherfuckers from now on. If I give any information or consult anybody on anything, I'm just going to invoice them for 50 G's and be like, see how you like them fucking apples. I'm sorry, that's just the cost of my services. But what they'll do is they'll say, well, you don't have a business license. You don't have the king's permission to have a business. And for some ungodly reason in this country, we allow a system to play out where we need permissions and permits and licenses and certificates to do everything. Now, you want people to do a quality job. You want people to have a level of skills, especially a doctor. A doctor, I totally understand. But when there is a malpractice situation, and it doesn't matter if they are a surgeon, it doesn't matter if they're a psycho doctor, if there is malpractice even in the slightest, they should be hit with a lawsuit. And oftentimes they are not. Especially when it comes to mental health, because there are not an army of lawyers out there willing enough to take your case, because they're not going to have the resources or the medical understanding to defend you adequately in court, because some mental health counselor or some certified mental health junkie decided to say that you are mentally unfit in a given situation without ever having a conversation with you, without knowing all of the facts, and without any information really. They will pass out a diagnosis, or they will call men with guns to subvert your rights because they have a feeling. Happens all the time. We have deputies in this country. Not just deputies, but we have law enforcement in this country who constantly place people on emergency detention orders for mental health reasons, because they simply don't want to deal with somebody who can articulate themselves well, who can show that the cops are violating their rights. Anybody who advocates their own defense, or says, hey, I'm not breaking the law, they will automatically assign, oh, well, you're 5150, so you actually don't have rights, and we're going to go ahead and throw you in this mental facility for 72 hours for you to get evaluated. That gets you off the streets, and that gets me off the hook for having to deal with you because everybody else around you wants you out of there, even though you're legally allowed to be here, you're lawfully able to be here, and other people have hurt feelings. So therefore, we're going to just trump your rights. Happens all times. And then there's no incentive for mental health professionals to just let you go. They will literally justify any reason or make up any reason to keep you in their facility because they will bill you for that. They will say, okay, well, now you owe us money. You were put here against your will, but you owe us money. And it's a sad state of affairs. So medical professionals can be domestic terrorists. Law enforcement officers are domestic terrorists. They prey on people. They hunt people. They literally call things manhunts. And people that they have manhunted, we come to find out, hey, yo, this guy was just defending himself when state agents were overstepping their bounds. Or, hey, you guys are raiding a home of a person who didn't break the law, actually. You guys did. You guys are raiding someone's home based on a false call, which being swatted is domestic terrorism. Anybody who swats another person, meaning they will call law enforcement in that person's community and say, hey, this person is holding people hostage, yada, 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 yada. Even though that person is just playing a video game and gets them swatted, yeah, that's domestic terrorism. And then the law enforcement officers who do not vet the information, meaning, hey, we may have a situation. Let's send one officer to go have a dialogue with this person. Make sure that this is an actual thing. Instead of, well, we're going to group all these SWAT officers together to go raid this home and put people's lives in danger and shoot pets and animals without even having a conversation with the resident or someone in that house, or observing with their own eyes for longer than 2 seconds anything that's going on outside the house or any observable anything. Oh, I don't hear screams. I don't hear anything coming from that home. I knocked on the door, had a conversation with the guy, didn't smell an odor, didn't sense anything was wrong, asked to do a search of the home. They said, yeah, because a lot of citizens will look, hey, man, I'm not doing anything. I'm playing my video games. Go ahead and walk around, take a look. Or, hey, even as an officer, I'd be like, dude, I don't care if you have weed. I don't care if you have whatever the fuck you're doing in here, as long as you're not trying to kill people, let me take a look. Or, hey, get the warrant, but do like normal cops should do. Knock on the door. Hey, we're the police. Let me go in here and say, the reason no-knock raids were invented is for the cartels, but they use it on everybody. They will literally use it on everybody. Joe Citizen will be minding his own business in a home. Police will come busting in there like a military fucking rescue team and fucking shoot dogs, fucking point guns at kids. And I'll go back to Chicago again. Chicago, you're notorious. You are notorious for violating people's rights. You're notorious for believing that you guys have carte blanche and just raiding motherfuckers and not being held accountable. The news has already documented that you literally have a history and a problem, Chicago PD, for raiding homes, the wrong homes, and doing it on faulty information. And it costs people lives. It costs animals their lives. It costs people thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars in therapy and fixing their shit that you came in and broke. The purpose of a warrant is to search specifically for A, the person, or B, the things to which you believe the people cannot have. Like, that guy has 3 million tons of cocaine in there. Well, I'm obviously seeing a one floor flat. That's obviously not the case. Or if I do go in there and I find a bunch of weed, so what? I find a few lines of coke, so what? The best scenario that can happen is, hey, you know what? We're gonna take, here's your medical facility summons. You need to go check into a facility. That should actually happen more often than not. Like, yo, hey man, you got this serious addiction issue going on. Your house looks clean. Otherwise, you got a $60,000 a year job. You got a little bit of a cocaine problem. Here's your medical summons. You need to go check yourself into treatment. Or hey, you need to come off that shit. But throwing them directly into jail, having their job totally fucking removed. I mean, you're putting these people into situations where, yeah, they did so well for so long, they have one fuck up in life, and then you're pretty much having them dig out of debt for the rest of their life after that, having them dig out of the shit, and then they can't get quality jobs. And we have so many people in this country who have to stay in the criminal entity because they can't get regular jobs because they may have a felony on their record. They may have a money thing on their record. Oh, well, you're being accused, and we found that you didn't dot your I's or cross your T's on this financial documentation, so we're going to hit you with financial fraud or medical fraud or whatever fraud. We're going to hit you with that, and then now you can't get a job in any of those industries at all. You can't go back into the financial industry. You can't do shit. Now, and these are usually not even high white-collar crime people. These are people that are, not properly filing paperwork or not properly documenting their hours. Yeah, you'll have cops that are caught stealing quantity amount of hours and they're still at their own home asleep, but they checked into work somehow. That happens. I can't remember exactly what state, but you had a state trooper who was the highest paid state employee in the state, and it was because he's billing overtime that caught the awareness of the public. They're like, whoa, this guy is the highest paid employee in the state. How the fuck is he making so much money? And this guy's got to be Superman because he never sleeps. He's got to be working 18, 20 hours a day. Come to find out, he's checking into work, but he's sleeping at home, or he's at home, or he's at the restaurant, or he's with his kids, but somehow he's at work still. In fucking sane. And then, he's going to get fired from his current position, but he's going to go work in law enforcement again at another agency. Because what happens a lot of the times is cops will get fired for a myriad of reasons, but they won't have their post certification stripped. Honestly, if you get fired for stealing time or committing a crime as an officer, that should be the first thing to go. Well, sorry. Not only are you losing your job, but you're losing your post certification. You'll never be a police officer again. And that never happens. What happens is you have these gypsy cops, and it's a term, it's a real thing, where they're going to get fired from one police department, but mosey on down to another police department or the sheriff's department or something in that same area and get hired within a week and then go back to terrorizing people because they are domestic terrorists. So the law enforcement community is full of domestic terrorists. You have politicians that are domestic terrorists because they're not beholden to you. They are beholden to the corporations that give them money. So again, we are obligated in this country, especially veterans, we are obligated in this country to defend the Constitution from any enemies, foreign and domestic. So even if you're a veteran, even if you're a citizen now and you're like, I'm done with the military, I did my time, you have a moral obligation. You have an obligation because you swore an oath to the Constitution. I swore an oath to the Constitution. That's why I do what I do now. I have to advocate for this because other people are just unwilling or woefully ignorant, and they don't care that the government is stealing from them. They don't care that they are